Hello, New Zealand. This is episode number 44. Welcome to Political Playback. 44 episodes without being cancelled, despite having me and Simon O'Connor. How have we done that, Simon?
I don't know. Something strange is happening in the world at the moment, including us not being cancelled.
What's happened to the broadcasting standards when you really need them? Anyway,
That's right.
look, we've got a great lineup, and I did chuckle because our friend is back, Harrison Moore. What an end of afternoon treat to watch some good old political playback. And again, please welcome in Mr. McCoskey and Mr. O'Connor. Harrison, you are our favourite supporter. There we go. If you do want to comment, come through on our YouTube account, Family First, or you can come through on the Family First Facebook page. You may be watching on Instagram, LinkedIn, Substack, X. Did I miss anything there? Maybe Simon's Facebook page, my personal Facebook page. But if you want us to see your comment, you need to do it on the Family First Facebook page or the YouTube account. Right, let's get straight into it. And look, I just did want to start with a bit of a funny here, Simon, the image of the week. And it's based on the story around the fact that the Ministry of Education put out a book on maths. And unfortunately, they got it slightly wrong, and they labelled a triangle they labelled a rectangle as a triangle. And amongst a few other errors. So this is the Ministry of Education doing a booklet for kids on maths and mislabeling and getting some of the sums wrong. But then I thought to myself, well, if the Ministry of Education also thinks that a boy can become a girl and a girl can become a boy, why can't a rectangle identify as a triangle? And I've got to be right on that, surely.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you never know. This might have been sponsored or encouraged, consulted by Inside Out and the like. Again, geometric shapes can identify however they want. A hexagon can be a circle, and a triangle can be a rectangle. If two rectangles want to work together, they can call themselves a square. Actually, that's probably quite true, actually.
How binary of you. I can't believe you just said that. All right. Anyway, that was our funny image of the week as we get into political playback. Let's have a look at the latest polls. And this is just out from Roy Morgan. Actually, I meant to just check before we came on air. I don't think I saw any sort of major reporting of this poll. And maybe when you see the result, you'll sort of realise why. So what's interesting in this one is that on the left-hand side is the election result. So 18 months ago, or no, 20 months ago now. And then on the right is their current polling. Now, national, 38 down to 31, that will concern them. ACT a little bit up. New Zealand First, decent. I mean, they've increased 50%. Labour has increased reasonably. Greens, exactly where they were, which is kind of interesting. And Maori Party, exactly where they were. Now, this is the interesting thing. When I looked at the data, just have a look at ACT. Women on the left, men on the right. Men are so much more likely to vote for ACT than women. And then go down to the Greens. Women more likely to vote for Greens and the Māori Party. You just want to comment on that graph before I show you the second one, which I think is why the media aren't reporting this. But any comments on that party vote, Simon?
Yeah, it's still it's too tight, I would say, for anyone to be comfortable. I mean, obviously the opposition will be happier. Look, it doesn't surprise me. Putting it really simply, the media have been putting the boot into National from day one and continue to, to sort of balance that comment too, though, Bob. They've done a few things which aren't helping.
Yeah.
ACT going up a bit, that doesn't surprise me. New Zealand First, I mean, we've seen it across other polls, haven't we? They're speaking into that, popular sentiments. Labour will be pleased. They basically picked back up their core voters to go from effectively 27 to 31. I was surprised that Greens and Māori Party are holding, but as I say it to you, Bob, when you think about it, they are the radicals. Yeah. And they're not really picking up more people. Maybe I'm saying this the wrong way, but they get a lot more airtime through mainstream media than actually what they represent in terms of the number of voters.
Yeah. The other interesting thing to note, and look, I just have Googled and doesn't seem to be reported by any of the mainstream media. Is Roy Morgan one they usually ignore? I've seen reports on them.
Roy Morgan is a very broad poll, so they ask you a myriad of questions. So they'll ask you from everything, what toothpaste you use, to what tires are on your car, to how you're going to vote. And I forgot what they call it. It's an exceptionally broad poll, and it's been often one of the less accurate ones. But put it this way, had the numbers been more in the opposition's favour, I think the media would be all over it. But there isn't a strong headline in this. They can't really put the boot in. Well, I suppose they could try, but yeah, it's not the most respected poll. It's not a bad one, but it's not as respected as others like Courier, for example.
Okay. I was just interested though. If you look at this, you'll see that National, when you combine the centre-right parties, 52%, centre-left parties, 41%. So that's quite a difference. That means that the centre-right would still get elected if there was an election. So that's maybe why the media doesn't want to talk about it. But here's the interest. Oh, go on.
Not quite. Sorry to correct you. I think, and you can correct me, I think you've got your columns wrong. It's 51 to 46.
You're right. Yes. Good point.
Literally right.
Yeah. So the election was 52 to 41, and so that gap is closed 51 to 46. Yeah. No. Good point. So, but at the same time, National, ACT, New Zealand First are still, despite all the media press and all the critique and the cost of butter, they're still, and this leads into the second part of the poll, which I found interesting, Simon. So they asked, is the government going in the right direction, wrong direction? So on the left is election night. So 31% of us thought the government was going in the wrong direction on election night, and right direction. 57% said wrong direction. So, that's why the government changed. It's still negative, but right direction has increased from 31 on election night to 37. So you wouldn't think that if you listened to the media.
No, look, this poll in itself will give the government some consolation. Excuse me. But so people have seen, I'm sucking on a lozenge at the moment as I'm trying to protect my throat. Everyone's getting the lurgies. So people are going, what on earth is he doing, and coughing occasionally. This is where Roy Morgan can be a bit of an outlier. A lot of the other polls that have been done show a difference. So it's a bit of an outlier, but it's still of consolation to the government. Yeah, more people, even though it's only 6 points, it's better than going backwards.
Exactly. And yeah, despite all the media press, actually, I am just looking at an analysis of how close the pollsters were to, I'll come back to that. In a second, just as to how accurate they were in the last election, just to see whether we should be taking notice of Roy Morgan poll. Anyway, let's continue. Let's go on to our next topic. And obviously the big news of the week was the changing of NCEA. This was the announcement.
Today, the government is announcing that we are proposing to replace NCEA with a new national qualification that better ensures our young people are ready to take on the world. Although well-intentioned, the heavy flexibility in how students can go about attaining the qualification is too often not preparing them as well as it could be for life beyond school.
And while it has delivered in some areas, we have heard and seen that the flexibility has gone too far and that the complexity has masked poor performance. And I have to admit to all of you here in the room, and probably everyone in New Zealand who's watching, as a parent, even I did not understand NCEA. I had years of navigating my daughter through it, and it didn't make sense to me that an E is better than an A, why you can get credits for having a part-time job or participating in a group activity or filling in forms. I didn't understand why the children said to me, we don't need to sit the exam because we have enough credits already, and coming out of an exam, a 3-hour exam after only an hour. Insane.
Yeah, well, I think everybody had that concern, especially around parents. Once again, I just looked at this poll. This was on the Stuff website, and I mean, this isn't scientific, but it does give you a bit of an indication as to what people are thinking, and very strong support for NCEA being replaced. But is that just because we're oldies, Simon, and we all remember School C and UE and bursary?
I've pondered that. I mean, just before I answer that particular question, remember last week you had a Stuff poll which had Chris Hipkins at like 51% preferred.
Yeah, I've got
and our
that.
conclusion,
There we are.
was so we know in general the readers of Stuff lean to the left. So the
Yeah.
fact that the percentage for getting rid of NCEA was so strong, I think tells you something.
Yeah.
I did wonder if we're just going back because as you say, A to E is easier, but actually it is easier. It's more intuitive. The excellence achieved, not achieved, all of it, it's very confusing and annoyingly, and Erica summed it up well, E is better than an A, and so that's counterintuitive, not just to older people who by and large tend to be the first employers, but also to overseas. NCEA makes absolutely no sense to anyone overseas.
I was listening to a principal explaining why we changed from the old school C model, the UE, to NCEA, and I thought he made a very good point, because his argument was that in the days when we went through, Simon, it basically all built up to the final exam, and that was the yardstick. And if you failed that, basically that was it. And it didn't take into account that you may have, unless you were sick on the day of the exam and therefore they based it on internal assessment, then if you didn't perform well in the exam or you had a bad day, that was it. You had to resit that whole subject. So I sort of understand the argument that it was cutthroat approach previously. It just seemed we went to the other extreme where we basically cuddled and loved everybody across the line to get credits, and it wasn't preparing them for the workplace. Would that be a fair summation?
Look, I think it's a very fair summation, and actually the government's got to be careful that the pendulum doesn't swing back too far. The system under NCEA, well, it came in for exactly the reasons you just articulated. It was ruthless with exams, but you know what? You can still balance internal assessments and an exam. But I don't think it should surprise anyone that actually there's benefits in exams. It's a welcome to the real world moment. And I can't think of many jobs that don't have sort of the same equivalent pressure of an exam. With our own work, Bob, we know we've got to be on time to do our podcast and record. There are deadlines to get press releases out. We need things done and under pressure. And I think exams are good preparation for that. And the other point I'd make is most people are fine with exams. Some are not. And yep, the new system's going to have to balance that. But I think NCEA basically took the exceptions and tried to make that the norm. In other words, some people don't cope with exams. Let's change everything. And I just don't think that's appropriate. And then add into the fact that even if it's all exam-based or a mixture of exam and internal assessment, no one understands the reports that come home.
No, for those who are sort of the older here, they'll remember when I was at school, I remember that those who did art, it was all internally assessed, and they had to produce a folio. Did you do art at school, Simon?
Oh God, no. I mean, look,
No, same.
I'm as creative as a cinder block. I'm useless.
I couldn't draw to save myself, but I always used to feel sorry for them because they would literally, that's all they focused on. They had to produce this massive folio and it was all internally assessed. I was jealous because they didn't have an exam to swat for, but I actually think the folio was worse, the internal assessment. And that was part of the problem. But then again, when my oldest first went to high school, we had an interview with the principal, and the principal was going on about how great NCEA was and that her kids didn't even turn up for the exams because they already had enough credits. And that was when the kind of the red flag went on for me, and I thought, okay, what are we creating here? I understand that it shouldn't be all the eggs in the basket of a cutthroat exam, but to get to the point where you just switch off 2/3 of the way through the year because you've already got the credits, I think I don't think it's good discipline, is it? And I think that's the point you were getting at.
Yeah, it's a recipe for mediocrity, isn't it? We want excellence, as parents, as New Zealanders, we want excellence from our young people to be the best they can absolutely be and to be able to compete on the world stage. But NCEA drives that mediocrity. Oh, well, I've already got 55 out of 100, and therefore I've passed. I don't need to do anything more. And we just see that all around the country. And I would argue when you look at New Zealand's low productivity, the way that we do not punch above our weight against many countries, that's part of it. NCEA does not drive excellence. It drives mediocrity, including from the teachers. Let's never forget, here comes the centre-right ex-politician here, never forget a lot of the teachers don't want to be held to account for poor performance themselves. Again, classic centre-right perspective here. And people following might want to push back, but a lot of teachers are happy with NCEA, Bob, because, oh, look, they're all passing because they attended this and that. No, these new, assuming what the government's going to do, if little Johnny, little Mary ain't passing well, we can really now see and ask questions of those teachers.
Yeah, exactly. I stand corrected again. Rosemary says the art follow was externally assessed. Yeah, correct. I think the issue that I found was that they didn't have to the cut and thrust of the final exam, but they had a couple of weeks of mass panic.
We're going to give Bob a D for that comment.
I know. Well, I've already been corrected. I've already been corrected for misreading polling results as well. Abby says, I remember sitting school cert maths and getting 48%. Did another year and did really well throughout the year. But guess what? Abby, something went wrong there. Technical issues at the Hartvelt house. You'll have to send through the rest of the message. And Dee Dee says NCA obviously a leftist initiative. Would you agree with that, Simon?
Was it the Labor government who I could be wrong.
No, it was national, and it was Hekia Parata, I think, who started it, and then it was finally pushed through by none other than our favourite Trevor Mallard.
Gosh. I was going to say, and actually, even though asking the question, I think it generally had broad support. Well, I assume so. I mean, it's the classic case, isn't it? We could see that the previous system was not working as well as it could, and this looked like a great alternative. And maybe the analogy, Bob, is we weren't happy with the first past the post electoral system, so we tossed it out, brought in MMP, and now a lot of us are going, oh, God, well, that's not working well, but equally we don't want to go back. So let's see what the government comes up with. That's probably the last critical point here.
Okay.
One thing to get rid of it, what are they bringing in?
Okay. And in fairness to Abby, I just noticed that Gordon just increased our allowance for number of words on a message. So I think it must have been our system that cut off Abby's message. So apologies to Abby. Send it through now and the whole message will come through. Anyway, we're having a great night tonight. Gosh, we're really going to get cancelled. Other media after Luxon. Firstly, we had Thomas Coughlin from the New Zealand Herald. He basically is questioning, what happens if the government don't believe Luxon? Can Luxon convince voters that better times are coming? But then I noticed also that Audrey Young, she's been having a bit of a go as well. So here's just a couple of stories recently, because you alerted me to this, Simon, and I just did a little bit of research. So this is just July. The signs that Christopher Luxon is getting worried. The sweary PM, Luxon feels the heat and loses his cool. Who would lead if Luxon couldn't? And, well, here's one from Stuff. Luxon is filler text, but who replaces him? And what really got us going was Audrey Young, back to Audrey Young. She says, well, Eric Stanford, she shows how to get things done. The NCEA change has been done and there was very little disagreement. What's going on here, Simon? Is the media doing a little bit of lobbying for a replacement leader for National?
That's how I would read it, to be honest. I think it started, we had a really bad start of the year for Luxon. I mean, there was some real possibility, I think, months ago that there could be change. I mean, national MPs are naturally very conservative in this space, are very reluctant. But it did go quiet. He was doing better. But as you've shown with those headlines, probably the last, 2 or 3 weeks, the drums have been beating again. I think in many ways quite unfairly. Again, he's not setting the world on fire, but I don't think he's done major missteps. But the media took the opportunity of his, I think he did a 10-minute talk where he outlined all the government's policies, and that seemed to have set the media off. And so mischievous headlines. But there is a part of me goes, this is calculated to a degree. And you see it most clearly with Audrey. You say just chip, chip, chip away. And then, oh, now she's beginning to back somebody. And that last one you had about Erica makes me go, okay, who's stirring, both in the media and within the caucus? This is a classic tactic. Just keep chipping away at the leader and then start promoting who they like or who they want. And usually there's a little bit of going backwards and forwards between the various MPs and media. So I'm a little suspicious.
If you were a betting person, who would you be placing odds on to replace Luxon one day?
Look, I have to say at this point, I'd say he won't be replaced. I think it would be a very big move. I think it's possible, not probable. And you've probably got 4 people. I mean, it's no surprise the media talks about it. So Erica Stanford, Chris Bishop, Nicola Willis, Simeon Brown. I think realistically, you're probably talking someone like Erica. She would probably want it, to be honest. Chris Bishop would be the other one. Nicola Willis is struggling a little bit, and I'm not sure, even though I think Simeon would be great, that he would be able to get the support needed. I don't know, but those would be the 4 names.
Yeah. Okay. I just would warn people that if you're thinking that Stanford, Bishop or Willis are good replacements, go and have a look at their voting record on valueyourvote.nz, and you will find that they may call themselves centre-right Conservative Party, but they are not social conservatives at all. And look, you may be frustrated with some of the stances that Christopher Luxon has taken, but yeah, it will get worse. My good friend Abby has got her full message through, and it's worth reading. I remember sitting school cert maths and getting 48% in the final exam. I did another year of school cert maths, did really well throughout the year, but guess what? I got 48.
Consistency.
Yeah. You always hope that the exam was hard and that everyone would be scaled up. In the old days, we used to call it being scaled up. I remember doing that at Manukau Polytech when I used to lecture there, the old scaling and finding the cut-off line for the pass and the fail. Anyway, okay, what are we up to? We're up to topic number 5, and this is the Aotearoa versus New Zealand debate. Look, the interesting thing is that I think everybody is kind of on board with the bilingual, the understanding that Māori is official language, having that both languages. But when it comes to the country name, when you look at the polling, so this is one from Research New Zealand, and you'll see there that only 19% want Aotearoa New Zealand and 8% want just Aotearoa. 66% want to retain where we're at. Now, there was also, once again, an unscientific, this is probably scientific or more scientific because it's a random polling company, the online one on Stuff. Once again, surprisingly, 2 out of 3 people wanted New Zealand. And that was the reason that I loaded that image that I showed you, Simon, because in another poll on the same outlet, Stuff, we saw that it's very left-leaning with Chloe and Chris way in front as preferred Prime Minister. So taking that into account, you then go back to this online poll and 2 out of 3 want New Zealand. So to me, I'm just wondering whether people accept the bilingual aspect, but it's whether it's been rammed down. It's the point I made to the Straight Talk panel on Monday night, is that it has just been indoctrinated to the point where, the media have done it, and it gets up people's wick when stuff is rammed down and pushed without sort of a appropriate discussion.
Yeah, I think that's probably what's driving a lot of this. It's been foisted on people. Either you accept we're going to replace the name of New Zealand because the elites have decided it's the right thing, and if you disagree with us, you're a racist. Is pretty much the playbook, and I think people are getting sick of it. Personally, I think it's one of the things that just should go to the people for a vote. Have a referendum. on it. Now, they won't want that, Bob, because
No,
the
they won't.
results would be pretty clear. But again, it's what I talked about with this guy, Musa Al-Ghabi, a few weeks ago, an American sociologist, that the elites, what you would think of as progressives, woke, the academics, the media, some of the political class, they try to virtue signal their greatness. And this was one of them. They are better than us because they want to change the name. Whereas most Kiwis are going, we're happy being called New Zealand. I don't care what's on the passports. I'm really more worried about the price of butter and how my kids have been educated. But they've been hammered day after day on this. And I think they are sick of it. And by the way, Aotearoa is just one of the names. Neoterani is another one. There's multiple options. And, the other quick point I'd make, there wasn't a nation of Aotearoa. There wasn't even a conception of that. New Zealand, before Treaty of Waitangi, was a collection of tribes. And that's fine. That was just what it is. There wasn't any sense of a state. It was tribes, very much a tribal land. So even if you go that direction, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But yeah, mostly this is about people going, don't tell me what to think. I can make up my own mind. Thanks very much.
It is interesting when the public opinion versus the referendum. It seems, I think this is one area where we may differ, Simon, is that I'm a big believer in referendum, even when I know that maybe it won't go our way. I noticed that when we did the media analysis of the cannabis referendum versus the euthanasia referendum, the coverage of the euthanasia referendum was actually a lot fairer. And my argument would be because the media knew that they were going to win that one. It was pretty clear that one had the public support, rightly or wrongly. They'd done a very good job at misrepresenting what assisted suicide was about and what palliative care was about. Whereas for the cannabis referendum, they knew that was close, and so we found there was a 2-to-1 in favour of promoting a yes vote. But it does seem like that the media, they won't want to talk about a referendum because they know they haven't got the public support on this, so they're going to ram it down by just keep on using the term, and that's what annoys people.
It does. Exactly. It's that foisting on people. And as I said at the start, either accept what the elites are telling you or be called racist. And I think that just makes the hair on a lot of people's neck go up. Because it's not just the country's name. You're being told now to call students akonga, is it? God, I'm having God, I even studied Maori, but I'm just sorry, I've just had a complete...
No, that was the teacher.
Kaimahi's the teacher.
Yeah.
Akonga, I think, is for the students. And again, it's not that it's wrong, but it's just being foisted on people. And so, that's where Winston politically's found a little bit of political energy. Again, why are we naming buildings in a way that I'm not just thinking building government departments, again, being foisted on people. And that's frustrating. I'd make one quick point, though, on referendum or referenda. I'm generally, as you know, not in great favour of them. But something like this would be more, I don't know, palatable to me because it's fairly simple. My issue, Bob, with referendum, like euthanasia or any of those issues, they're complicated. And to try and reduce them to a binary choice, pretty hard, I would argue. But, what do you want to call your country? You don't have to be a particularly, insightful ethicist, philosopher, anything. You can make a decision. But you're right, the media won't want it.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. I think a referenda is difficult when it's not an easy yes or no binary answer. We're not into binaries here, are we? But so for euthanasia, I mean, as you know, when we were campaigning on that, one of the biggest smoke screens was about what rights people already had to end treatment, to request no further treatment. And, they were trying to argue that, that's why we need euthanasia, so that people can request that. Well, no, they don't. They already had the right to say no to any more treatment. So, yeah, I agree that binary aspect. Name of the country, though, I mean, that would also cause a bit of a that could be misrepresented as well. Like you say, the labelling of, well, if you don't vote, you're a racist. Unfortunately, that label has been thrown out, and it's designed to shut down any pushback, and it's probably working.
Oh, I think it does, although people don't know what you do in the voting booth. So you're a racist or you're a misogynist or you're a bigot is tossed out in the public sphere to shut someone down. So the name and shame. It's a little bit harder in the voting booth. But try to put a slightly different spin or perspective on things. Countries do change their name. Turkey has moved to Turkey. The Czech Republic now is often thought of as Czechia. You've got North Macedonia, which used to be, I think part of Greece. I've got that probably geographically wrong. Think of some of the countries in Africa. So countries do change names. People can adapt.
Rhodesia.
But I think, Rhodesia, of course, now Zimbabwe. Is it Zaire turned, what is that now?
So how did they change by referendum, or was that just by edict?
Might be by edict, thinking the likes of Zimbabwe, but I'd have to look that up. In fact, our viewers who can get to Google quicker than you and I can, because we're hosting the show, can tell us.
Yeah.
But I think the change in itself is not well accepted by Kiwis, but they don't again appreciate being told that they must think this way. I think that's why you see the polling numbers that you've been presenting.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue. The reason I haven't got a four-wheel drive or a diesel is because road user charges. So I can't think of anything worse of having to deal with that. But we're all going on road user charges, according to the government. This was the announcement.
The government has a plan to transition the entire 3.5 million vehicle fleet to a fairer electronic road user charges system. Essentially, the government will be abolishing petrol tax. People will pay for the roads based on how much they use them. And if we get this right, people will pay for, based on their vehicle type, the distance travelled, the location, and the time of use. Now, the first step is to modernise the law so we can facilitate private sector innovation and competition. The current road user charges system is a hassle. It's manual, it's paper-based, requires you to constantly monitor your odometer, manually buy and display paper licences on your windscreen. You've got to buy them in 1,000-kilometre chunks. This is not a system, frankly, fit for the 21st century, let alone the future. So instead of expanding a clunky government system, we're going to reform the rules to allow the market to deliver innovative, user-friendly services to drivers.
All right. Had you heard any discussion of this when you were in Parliament?
Yeah, a little bit, because it is a bit of a mess. And I have petrol vehicles and diesel vehicles, and Chris, as in Bishop's, right? And you've intimated it too. I've got to go down to the post office, guess how many thousand I need, pay what feels like a whopping amount of money. I mean, to be honest, that's just simple psychology, because, when you're at the petrol pump, you're not thinking about the incremental. So yeah, it has been discussed. It was always seen as a bit too hard, but if I might, Bob, I mean, there's two things here. One is, it doesn't matter if you're paying road user charges or you're paying at the pump, you're still going to be paying. So when they rightly say, we're going to get rid of fuel taxes, yeah, they are, but it's just going to come through the road user charges. But there was something, and I hadn't actually listened, clearly not properly, before. About halfway through, we talked about how they're going to calculate it. That actually is an enormous amount of information that they will be collecting about you and your vehicle. If they're going to go, right, Simon drives this type of car on these type of roads at these times of the day, that's an enormous amount of data feeding in. And, call me a little paranoid. Governments go, you know what? We don't want these guys traveling to work. We want to make sure they jump on the buses. All of a sudden, my road user charges, I'm making it up for exaggeration here, but doubles, triples. So in other words, they can now influence through the road user charge system our behaviours. And that actually now makes me a bit nervous that I begin to think about this.
Yeah. So basically what they're wanting to do is catch petrol, diesel, electric, or hybrid. So I've got a hybrid. And so I guess the argument against road user charges is that they weren't paying. Actually, was the diesel petrol tax less than the normal petrol tax because of the fact that you were paying road user charges as well? I guess they were allowing for that.
You don't. So when I take my car to the petrol pump and put
Is this
diesel
your
in
gas?
it.
Is this your gas guzzling diesel or your emitting petrol car?
So when I take my little petrol car,
A carbon footprint car. Yeah.
that's right. I just drive around the block a couple of extra times to annoy the climate change people. No, so when I fill up with petrol, 91 or 95, I'm paying fuel tax. When I fill up the diesel, I'm not paying fuel tax or diesel tax.
Okay.
I'm paying that through my road user charges. So you're not paying twice, but it all comes out around about the same. So yeah, diesel's cheaper, but you're paying thousands to buy the RUC or the road user charges. But again, when you ran that piece, and I hadn't listened to it clearly enough, but again, if the government is collecting data, including when you are traveling, where you are traveling, they can begin to affect the system. In other words, it's not going to be a universal road user charge simply based on the weight of your vehicle, by the way, which will affect EV users. So I'm thinking as we talk here, even though I prepared for this, EVs obviously don't get fuel, but they do have weight. They damage the road. So this is a positive. But again, from what Chris said, a lot of data. I keep coming back. That's a lot of data which they can use to then affect social change on you and your behaviours.
But they're trying to reassure us by saying, oh, well, it's not going to be the government. They're going to go to the private sector and ask for them to come up with a system that can assess the vehicle you're driving, where you've driven, and how long you've driven for. That's a bit like big what do they say? Big brother. Big brother monitoring where you're going. I mean, obviously the issue is electric cars and hybrid. I mean, that was one of the most beautiful things about getting a hybrid is the petrol bill just went down massively. So therefore I'm paying less petrol tax. So I mean, maybe it's bringing electric cars and hybrid cars just up to the level. Yeah, I don't know. You always hope with technology it can be real super simple. Yeah, I know. But you're right. When you turn up to the petrol tank, you're not actually thinking about the petrol tax, even though the price of the petrol would be half the price if it wasn't for the petrol tax. I'm more concerned about what's the petrol tax going on, because I don't think it's going necessarily totally on roads. I did see... No, I thought
it goes into the National
figures.
Land Transport Fund, I think. It's relatively ring-fenced. Governments can tinker with that. Hey, just quickly, I think going to the market to construct the system is actually a good thing, but it will be the government that determines ultimately the amounts. And then you've got all the privacy issues. Again, who's controlling the data? It's just that granular level that Christopher was getting down to. And I keep saying I hadn't fully thought about it, but that's a lot of data which then future governments can use to try and affect your usage change. If you're that tradie who has to go into Auckland Central in the morning, they arguably could be charging you more money than the white collar worker who can make the decision to go in at 11. So there's a few gnarly issues here, Bob.
Okay, we've got people making comments. Richard says vehicles from 2015 and their onboard computers have geocaching, which gives the capability of not just tracking, but also stopping you from going beyond a certain point. Monkeybot says you are all free to do as you are told. Nancy Margaret says Labor gets in, we may as well be in the gulag. Well, it's actually National proposing this, Nancy Margaret, so that might be a concern. And yeah, Catherine says the Nats are chopping off their own noses to spite their face. I'm not sure I actually think this is popular. In fact, I did see some polling that suggested that people thought this might be a simpler system, and maybe it's the fairness aspect, the fact that we know that there's a whole lot of road users that are actually not paying, and it's those woke electric car drivers and hybrids like me. So maybe there's a kind of fairness aspect that people like.
Oh, there's real positives here. And I've probably given the wrong impression. I'm probably more pondering elements of it. I think it is potentially simpler, fairer. As you say, it'll probably capture all road users. I think also that element of user pays is good. If you're going to be traveling a lot on the roads, you now will pay through it through the RUC. And I like the idea that it could be more of an online system than me having to go down to the post shop. But I come back to it, Bob. If they are talking not just simply what the type of car and distance is, but as the minister said, where do you live? What times are you traveling? It doesn't take a creative genius to work out how that can be manipulated, for want of a better term.
Yep. Okay, let's continue. A bit of a concern. There was a leaked paper that came out that basically suggested that the government was going to restrict bottle stores, alcohol stores. Currently, they can open from 7 a.m. through to 11 o'clock at night. I don't know why people need alcohol at 7 a.m. And, you know, the problem with alcohol shops open till 11 at night is that encouraging some of the alcohol harm that we're seeing. They suggested dropping it from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. down to 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., which is still seems a heck of a long time each day. Of course, the problem with alcohol outlets is that the major saturation, not in Remuera or Torbay, it's in South Auckland, West Auckland, lower socio-economic areas. That's where they always set up. In fact, that was one of the key arguments against legalisation of cannabis, was that the cannabis stores would be targeted at the most vulnerable populations. I remember Ronji Tanielu having a debate with Helen Clark and saying, well, this is a reality of what's happening in South Auckland and lower socio-economic areas. They'll be the ones targeted. But apparently there was a draft cabinet paper, documents leaked to Radio New Zealand, which I might get you to comment on that aspect, Simon, because that's an interesting one. Documents leaked to Radio New Zealand. Apparently there was a draft cabinet paper suggesting that, or basically the alcohol lobby had got on to the Associate Justice Minister, which is ACT's Nicole McKee, and said that, no, we don't want to restrict the alcohol stores. So maybe there's two aspects of this to comment on, Simon. Firstly, there's a leak. That must be coming from within the ministry somewhere, who don't like the influence that the alcohol industry is having. I note also that this report is by Guy Espiner, and there's no doubt about it. He is on the bandwagon of this issue. Now, on this particular one, I agree with him that there is concern about the proliferation of alcohol in our society and the harm it's doing. So good on him. But it's interesting that he is going really hard on this one. But also this cabinet paper, I mean, is it just a proposal? Is it just part of the discussion? What's going on here?
Yeah, look, a range of good questions. Look, alcohol is always a fraught discussion in Parliament. There's a real range of views between those who want a lot more restrictions through to those that are just like, hey, look, we shouldn't really be interfering in people's rights. And yeah, we understand some have problems, but let's not over-regulate it. So it is a fraught space. There's a lot of lobbying that happens both ways. So you're right, the alcohol lobby undoubtedly spoken into to this, but you know, let's also be somewhat balanced in saying that a lot of the I don't know, they like the Boyd Swinburnes and others pushing very hard. But cabinet papers are fairly serious. That's quite a lot of time to get up to that level, even if it's just draft. So for it to be U-turned is significant. My guess, and I'm purely speculating, it will be a minister more senior than Nicole, who either themselves disagrees or has been lobbied. That's my guess. You know, it would be unusual in my mind that a minister, in this case Nicole, would have done all the work in drafting, because again, for it to get to draft stage, he's effectively approved it. Someone more senior said, we're not doing this. Because it is quite a U-turn, and it seems to be delivering everything the alcohol lobby wants. And what she was suggesting, as you touched on, Bob, isn't all that extreme. But then you're dead right, and I'll finish with this because I'm talking too much. It's been leaked because someone, either in the cabinet, her office, or in the ministry, is very upset. They see this as a moral failure, I would guess. And so they've leaked it, which ain't good at all, regardless of what you think of this topic. But leaks out of the civil service is never a good thing.
How intense is the alcohol lobbying?
I wouldn't say it's particularly intense. No, I wouldn't actually say it was intense. They're good at it. They're very good at just being able to sidle up and have a chat. Obviously, you know, being the alcohol lobby, just like, you know, Fonterra can turn up with milk products and Zespri turns up with kiwi fruit. They're just, the top lobbyists are good. They're just very good. You're not, and by the way, I would always argue, as someone who's been lobbied by a whole lot of groups, most MPs still have a brain. Just because someone comes up to you and says, Simon, do this with alcohol, do this with casinos, do this with milk products, doesn't mean you, okay. But they're good at what they do. They're slick, as you might expect with something that's incredibly well funded.
There's definitely some undermining of Nicole McKee. I mean, I think she is a bit of a target, isn't she? Because there was also leaking of information around gun control with Nicole McKee. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and it always seems to follow Nicole McKee, rightly or wrongly. But she's definitely pushing back against some of the bureaucrats, and I always find it interesting. I mean, that's one of the things that I've always wondered, Simon. I've always sort of really valued loyalty and knowing that you've got a team that's going in the same direction and isn't sort of leaking behind you. But in politics, wow, it must be a real difficult situation. You must be constantly thinking, okay, is this a reliable, someone I'm working with?
Yeah, I'm just taking notes of what you expect of Family First staff. So don't mind me for a minute. What was the loyal? No, that's all right. Yeah, look, this is part of the toxicity of political life. I mean, if you've got a couple of people who you can intensely trust, it makes a huge difference. And look, I was fortunate with staff, and some colleagues could be quite free and frank, and exceptionally fortunate. But you are checking your back. Hey, could someone help get the knife out of my back? I know it's not me who put it there because I can't reach it. There's games within games. You talked earlier about Audrey Young talking about Erica and pushing down Luxon. Those are games that have been played. Yeah. Who's whispering to who? And similarly, you could say something to a colleague quite innocently, but they go, "Ooh, here's a chance to use it against you in some way." I'll always remember, I won't get too specific, but being asked, how am I doing? Oh, you look tired, Simon. And, the honest answer would be, yeah, it's been, 100 hours this week. I'm exhausted. But if you said that, they go, oh, he's not coping. He's struggling. And, this is all the mischief and toxicity, and it's part of politics. Yeah. You sign up into it, but yeah, it's a strange place.
It is. Okay. Now, speaking of integrity, we actually touched on this last week, and it's this Integrity Institute that's been set up by, now I always say Bryce Edwards. Bryce Edwards from Victoria University. It seems to be a little bit like a think tank, I would put it maybe like the Disinformation Project. And basically what they've put together is this New Zealand Lobbying and Influence Register, which is on their website. The funny thing is that when you scroll down the page to the register, there's nothing on it. I'm not, because they actually say, here's the start of our list and let us know about other groups that you're concerned about. So I'm not sure whether they started and then they took away or whether they're still filling in the page. But here's the interesting thing, is that a few researchers have looked at their deed of trust, and their deed of trust, I mean, usually deeds of trust are boring as just have the mechanics and a few aims of the organisation, but they got quite specific, and I'm going to be very clever here, and we're going to put ourselves above there.
Ooh.
And yeah, nice, eh? And in the deed trust, it says that they are going to research the origins and activities of the New Zealand Taxpayers Union, the Maxim Institute, and other similar organisations. Now, I think this is an outrage because they haven't got Family First there, and I'm going to contact them. But as well as researching Taxpayers Union and the Maxim Institute, they're also going to look at the research of lobbyists, the Taxpayers Union. Again, they really got it in for them, and the New Zealand Initiative. And then later on in the document, they talk about research and educate, which basically is a code word for lobby, because they want to get charitable status, I assume, which they'll probably get because they don't believe that marriage is one man, one woman. But interestingly, I've just underlined a couple of red flags here. Arrange with Stuff and other news media for a regular comment column. Good luck to that. I mean, you've been really successful on that, eh, Simon? What is it, 3-0 against Phil Goff? You're hopeless.
Indeed.
Contact all. Sorry, for those who don't understand, Phil Goff has been writing articles promoting Palestine and Hamas, well, indirectly Hamas and the information coming out of there. Every time he's written one, Simon has offered a contrary view. And it's Phil Goff, 3, Simon O'Connor, 0. So who would employ Simon O'Connor? I don't know. But anyway, the Integrity Institute wants to contact all journalists and offer to provide comments on government decisions that favour nasty businesses, nasty farmers, or the nasty wealthy. I'm surprised they haven't added white people in there. And what about this one? Pay the news media expenses to conduct a sting operation. Wow, that's pretty out there. Does this look like a whole lot of red flags to you, Simon?
Oh, massively so. And, you're doing great work highlighting it. And if I might too, David Farrar, actually Cam Slater, both, credit to them.
Andy O'Brien.
Dug deep in it. Yep. It does raise a lot of red flags, mainly for the hypocrisy. This is a Integrity Institute in name, which is, in all intents and purposes, a very left-leaning, probably climate change activist group. Clearly, they don't like farmers. Lobby group. And you can see that from that title. It's remarkable, Bob, that it's so explicit. So the hypocrisy is they're attacking lobbyists while themselves being lobbyists. And it probably comes down to the preferences of whoever the people are. And it's a very wealthy older couple that I can see their faces, but I can't remember their names, who are funding this and have funded other things before. And basically they are creating an institute to go and basically do hatchet jobs on people they don't like.
Yeah.
So, that's concerning. Hopefully the mainstream media begins to pick up on it a little bit, because it is just so obvious what's going on here. If this was what Bryce, and I actually still have time for Bryce, well, I did, if he was genuinely trying to create a wide register of various groups and influences, that's not actually a bad thing. But this is very specifically targeted. Yeah. And, they've already paid news. By the way, they've already paid Newsroom off. I think I mentioned that last week. It's not specifically there. Effectively, they pay money to Newsroom to go and do research and reporting in inverted commas.
And Number E as well.
Yeah, it's appalling. No integrity. There we go.
The name you were trying to think of is the Nelsons, Grant and Marilyn Nelson, who I'd never heard of, but they are funding. So I'll be interested to see whether there's this expose on them, because remember the platform, Sean Plunkett's The Platform, was funded by Wayne Wright, and massive expose, investigation into his businesses and all his funding. I'm not sure if there's been the same on the Nelsons, and I'm not saying they necessarily should. If they want to put their funding into funding this type of stuff, that's fine, but the Integrity Institute needs to be quite blunt about the fact that they really are only interested in investigating. I mean, it seems weird that they've specifically in their deed trust named organisations that they're going after, I'm still struggling to keep my blood pressure down that we're not listed there. I'm just shocked at that. That's quite amazing that we haven't been pinpointed. We need to be a little bit more radical, I think.
We're going to be more radical than the Maxim Institute, you think?
Yeah, well, Taxpayers Union, Federated Farmers, why do they get all the glory?
I think for, being serious for a moment from my side, I mean, part of it is Family First is a known quantity. I mean, but there's no real secrets, and I don't think there's secrets at the Taxpayer Union or that either. But, Family First is a known quantity, but we're part of the etc. But, if you're going to set up an Integrity Institute, then who's giving you the money, how much money, basically show best practice. But they're not. Yeah. They're actually hiding a lot of things. And again, this targeting so specific means that this is being personally driven. There are people with personal vendettas here, probably the Nelsons, seeing they're funding it. They've got a personal, again, to write it down, Bob. I mean, that's just bizarre.
And to target the wealthy. I mean, the Nelsons are obviously wealthy that they're putting funding into this. So I hope they're going to be targeted. Are they going to pay the news media to conduct a sting operation on the Nelsons? That would be an interesting question to ask. Okay, just seems very weird. Anyway, look, that hour went very quick. Just very quickly, we were just going to cover this topic about the question time. Just in Parliament, the Speaker says that apparently the opposition doesn't get a fair deal during question time. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. Look, it's a really awkward balance. And I think what the Speaker's seeing is, long and short, questions have to be pretty tight and succinct. You can't really give much context. So very short questions, and then the ministers often go off on huge tangents and do all they can to avoid answering the question. So trying to rebalance that does make sense. I mean, question time really is about trying to hold the government to account. But like so many things, good intentions and changing can create often unexpected and sometimes perverse outcomes. But put really simply, at the moment, when you ask a question, it's got to be pretty tight. And then the ministers can go fairly broad. So Jerry's saying, well, actually, it's not a bad idea to provide a little bit of context or to broaden the questions, but you can begin to extrapolate, Bob, how that could get out of control when Willie Jackson gives a 5-minute oration and a question on God knows what he's talking about and eventually lands where he should be. So
does that get rid of the patsy questions where the government asks questions of themselves and, makes it all nice? How good are you? That type of patsy question?
Oh, I know. We used to dread being asked to ask the patsy question. Dear John Key, why is this government so amazing? No, it won't. What will happen? And look, you've got to have them. The government does have to have an opportunity to say what it's doing well, not just be attacked the whole time. But all that will happen there is the patsy askers will simply now do even longer patsy questions. So, there are trade-offs.
Okay. Right, just before we go, just a very quick advertisement.
Hey guys, I'm Israel Folau.
And I'm Maria Folau.
And we're looking forward to sharing our story with you at the upcoming forum on the family in August.
It'll be the first time that we share our side of the story with you in New Zealand. We're excited to tell you about our experience, how much it has strengthened our faith, our marriage, and we hope that you feel very encouraged by it. We'll do an interview with Bob, and we hope you enjoy it.
Yep, and we've done that interview. We travelled to Brisbane before Izzy was up to Japan. Unfortunately, he's in Japan on the day of the conference. So that is a wrap. And it's, look, I've had a preview because I did the interview, and it is quite powerful. It's quite moving. To be honest, Gordon, the cameraman and I, you probably could have seen a tear in our eye a couple of times because it is a powerful testimony of what they went through, and they held firm, and that's why the theme is courage at a cultural tipping point. So I got some great speakers, and look, Simon, I know you're looking after Amanda Ackman from Canada for the week leading up to the forum, and she's very strong on just how far the slippery slope has gone on euthanasia in Canada, eh?
Oh, absolutely. Amanda's amazing. I mean, just very articulate, knows her stuff. So she's just going to be great. And she's all fired up. I've been talking to her quite regularly in the lead up. So she's going to be on the Thursday evening, which is one of the reasons people need to come both Thursday evening and Friday. But no, Amanda's fantastic. And of course, she, like the other speakers, other than, of course, the likes of Israel and Maria, our speakers will be there throughout. Yeah. So people attending get the chance to talk, discuss, debate. It'll be brilliant.
Exactly right. And we'll be there. So that's got to be a reason to be there. We won't be doing political playback that Thursday night because we might be a little bit busy putting our suits on. But anyway, fantastic job. Number 44 out of the way. Well done. Thank you, Simon. And thank you for watching, everybody. Sorry we didn't get to all the comments, but we will be back next Thursday night with political playback. Until then, have a great night.